Las Vegas, a blinding mirage of neon fantasies, billion-dollar temples to greed, and hollow promises of instant wealth. To the unsuspecting world, it's a spectacle of unstoppable power, burning brighter than ever before. But what if I told you that beneath that dazzling facade, the very foundations are fracturing? That deep, sinister cracks are spreading, mirroring the exact decay that brought Atlantic City to its knees. Remember Atlantic City? It was once the gilded playground of the East Coast, a shimmering empire built on boardwalks and casinos, peddling a dangerous myth of eternal prosperity. And then, in the blink of an eye, it all came crashing down. The casinos went dark. The tourists fled like rats from a sinking ship. A city once hailed as a symbol of American escape became a grim monument to the inevitable ruin that follows when corporate greed declares war on reality. Now, the whispers are turning into a roar. Is Las Vegas marching blindly down the same path to self-destruction? The evidence is mounting. Crippling costs, predatory hidden fees, and the haunting emptiness of casino floors. And a middle class bled dry and driven away? These are the telltale signs of a city hollowing out, its very soul being auctioned off to the highest bidder. In this investigation, we drag the dark secrets that Sin City is desperate to keep buried into the light. We will dissect the autopsy of Atlantic City's spectacular failure and reveal the chilling parallels that suggest Las Vegas is not just risking, but actively pursuing the very same catastrophic fate. Is it truly possible that the self-proclaimed entertainment capital of the world is teetering on the brink of a complete and utter collapse? Do not look away, because what you are about to witness will shatter your perception of Las Vegas forever. To grasp the terrifying reality of Las Vegas's predicament, we must first journey back in time and witness the tragic downfall of its predecessor, the cautionary tale etched in the ruins of the East Coast. Atlantic City was aggressively sold to the public as the undisputed crown jewel of American leisure. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, it erupted in a frenzy of gaudy casinos and opulent hotels, all built on the seductive lie of infinite growth. Gullible families from New York, Philadelphia, and all corners of the nation were lured in, chasing the illusion of an affordable vacation and a fleeting taste of a life they could never have. For a brief, intoxicating moment, the scheme actually worked. Atlantic City became a national phenomenon, but beneath the veneer of glamour, the entire structure was dangerously unsound. Its local economy was a one-trick pony, completely beholden to gambling profits. So, when competition inevitably sprang up in neighboring states, did Atlantic City adapt? Number, it foolishly doubled down on the very thing that was killing it: more casinos. But in a shocking display of negligence, every warning was ignored, and by the 1990s, the facade finally crumbled. Crime rates didn't just climb, they skyrocketed. Poverty spiraled into a desperate crisis, and the once bustling tourist trade simply vanished into thin air. The casinos that had once been virtual printing presses for cash were now hemorrhaging money. Entire neighborhoods buckled and collapsed under mountains of debt. And the boardwalk, once a beacon of joy and freedom, degenerated into a grim symbol of urban rot. Today, what's left of Atlantic City serves as a chilling cautionary tale. A city that fell from its throne as the East Coast's entertainment king to a broken town scarred by derelict buildings, the skeletal remains of closed casinos, and a toxic reputation from which it has never recovered. And this is precisely where the story takes a terrifying turn toward the present, because the very same deadly patterns that sealed Atlantic City's doom are now manifesting, like a recurring nightmare in Las Vegas. Skyrocketing costs, unchecked corporate avarice, a suicidal over-reliance on a single industry, and the calculated purging of the middle-class visitor. Oh, Las Vegas is bigger, no doubt. It's flashier and far more infamous than Atlantic City ever dreamed of being. But history has a brutal way of repeating itself, especially when the same arrogant mistakes are made with such reckless abandon. If an empire like Atlantic City could be brought to ruin, is it really so unthinkable that the glittering kingdom of Las Vegas could be next to fall? Before the greed took hold, Atlantic City was indeed the jewel of the East Coast. In the early 20th century, its reputation was built on wholesome foundations. Vast open beaches and magnificent stately hotels, and the legendary boardwalk, a ribbon of hope stretching along the Atlantic. It was a cherished summer sanctuary, a place where the average American family could feel a genuine, albeit temporary, sense of luxury. But then came the poison pill, the legalization of gambling in the 1970s. The city, in its naivety, believed it had discovered a magical solution. The first domino fell when Resorts International swung open its doors in 1978. In a flash, a plague of casinos spread across the skyline, each one whispering the same tired, toxic promises. Limitless jobs, a flood of tourists, and a prosperity that would defy time itself. And for a fleeting moment, the illusion held. The once charming boardwalk was suffocated by a garish neon glare. The casino floors swarmed with hopefuls, their faces lit by the glow of the machines. The city had become a full-blown national addiction. The media machine churned out headlines branding it the East Coast's answer to Las Vegas. Politicians, corporate sharks, and even the desperate local residents, they all drank the Kool-Aid, convinced that Atlantic City had finally punched its golden ticket to salvation. And so they came, pouring in from New York, Philadelphia, and beyond. A relentless tide of people chasing not just the fleeting high of a jackpot, but the increasingly hollow promise of affordable escapism. But behind the blinding glitter, the foundation was already rotting. The city made a fatal error, shackling its entire economy to the volatile whims of a single industry: gambling. Every other sector, from the corner store to the factory floor, was left to wither and die. The city became a hopeless addict, so dependent on its casino fix that it willfully ignored the catastrophic need to build a real, diversified economy. On the surface, Atlantic City projected an image of invincible strength, but its entire future was a house of cards, destined to collapse at the first breath of competition or the slightest tremor of an economic downturn. What they sold as a golden era was nothing but a gilded cage, the very start of a catastrophic addiction. As the 1980s dawned, Atlantic City was drowning in the illusion of a golden age. Monstrous towers of neon and glass clawed at the sky, each one a monument to greed. By the mid-1980s, over a dozen of these gambling dens were already in operation, a cancer spreading across the coastline. And so the city was branded the Las Vegas of the East, a title that would prove to be a curse. Blinded by greed, investors hurled cash at new monoliths, while corrupt or clueless leaders spouted shameful lies about rebuilding schools with gambling profits. Promises of fixing roads and delivering a prosperity that would never arrive. To the deluded masses, Atlantic City became the poster child for a dangerous myth: that a city could gamble its way back from the brink. But this so-called prosperity was a deal with the devil, and the price was the city's very soul. They went all in, betting everything on the casinos, willfully ignoring the catastrophic danger of building their future on a single rotten pillar. Predictably, legitimate jobs outside the casino machine began to vanish. Small, family-owned businesses were suffocated, and the local neighborhoods saw not a single dime of the billions being raked in on the gaming floors. While oblivious tourists swarmed the boardwalk, a cancer of poverty metastasized just streets away. For anyone not enslaved to the casinos, this sham revival felt like a slap in the face, a city they no longer belonged to. But even within this glittering facade, the foundation was already cracking. As more casinos erupted onto the scene, a cannibalistic war for every last dollar broke out. A fierce, self-destructive battle. They began to devour each other's profits. The cheap thrill of legal gambling wore off, and the returning crowds grew tighter with their wallets. And as the decade bled to a close, the rot set in. Crime rates began to explode. Joblessness festered in the forgotten neighborhoods, and those hollow promises of a thriving, balanced city were exposed for what they always were: a cruel, calculated deception. This facade of unstoppable growth was, in reality, just planting the seeds of its own spectacular demise. By the early 1990s, the cheap veneer of Atlantic City was peeling away, revealing the decay underneath. The celebrated boomtown was now showing the unmistakable symptoms of a terminal illness. The city's crippling addiction to casino revenue had become its fatal flaw. Then, the vultures began to circle. As neighboring states like Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Delaware legalized their own gambling rackets, Atlantic City's stranglehold on East Coast gaming was shattered overnight. Why would tourists drive for hours when a new shiny casino was right in their backyard? The flow of visitors slowed to a trickle, and the river of cash dried up. The shockwave of this collapse tore through the city with brutal speed. Those very casinos, built on audacious promises of infinite wealth, suddenly couldn't even pay their bills. Their solution? Betray their workers by slashing jobs and gutting wages. They squeezed the very lifeblood out of the workers who depended on them. Beyond the garish glow of the Strip, neighborhoods sank deeper into poverty, and unemployment became a plague. And crime? Crime became the city's new identity. The machine they swore would bring prosperity had instead created a fragile, glittering bubble. And it was about to burst. All the while, the iconic boardwalk, once the city's crown jewel, became a monument to its failure. Buildings stood as hollowed-out husks. Storefronts were boarded up, and the few tourists who dared to visit whispered of the pervasive sense of danger. The seductive lie that gambling would lift all boats had capsized, dragging the entire city down into a nightmare of broken promises and shattered lives. By the late 1990s, the damage was undeniable. Atlantic City was no longer a glamorous escape. It was a ghost story, a chilling cautionary tale of a city that sold its soul to the casino giants, only to be utterly destroyed when the fickle hand of fortune turned against it. And make no mistake, the horror was just beginning. The worst was yet to come. By the 2000s, Atlantic City was on life support. Casino shutdowns became sickeningly frequent, and the once vibrant boardwalk fell into an unnerving, tomb-like silence. The mega resorts that had promised thousands of careers simply locked their doors for good. They left behind nothing but skeletal ruins, still flickering with the ghosts of neon. Entire families who had dedicated their lives to this industry were cast aside with nothing, while the city government, which had foolishly become addicted to casino tax blood money, spiraled into a black hole of debt. The economic apocalypse was swift and merciless. Poverty rates skyrocketed and unemployment exploded. Entire neighborhoods were transformed into ghost towns, haunting testaments to the city's catastrophic bet. Once magnificent hotels crumbled into ruin, some mercifully demolished, others left to rot as skeletal reminders of a dead dream. The fantasy of Atlantic City as the shining star of the East Coast was officially over. All that was left was a hollowed-out corpse. It was a warning, carved in the scars of its own skyline. But perhaps the most terrifying part of Atlantic City's spectacular implosion is the sheer speed at which it happened. In less than 2 decades, the city plunged from the heights of promised prosperity into the abyss of total collapse and despair. And it is that breathtaking speed of decay that serves as a blood-curdling warning for Las Vegas. Because while the Vegas Strip glitters today with its billion-dollar temples and record-breaking profits, the same toxic symptoms are beginning to fester. A crippling overdependence on the casinos, the vanishing middle-class visitor, and the iron grip of corporate greed. These are the same dark omens echoing across the desert horizon. Atlantic City's autopsy proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that no city is too big to fail. Don't be fooled by the blinding lights. No empire is immune to collapse. And if the chilling lessons of history are any guide, Las Vegas is teetering on a precipice far more dangerous than anyone dares to confess. On the surface, it's a spectacle of invincibility. Las Vegas projects an image of unstoppable power. Its Strip a gaudy monument to billion-dollar excess and so-called world-class distractions. City leaders crow about record-breaking tourism figures, a desperate annual ritual, all while new towers claw at the sky, and flashy mega events like Formula One and the Super Bowl are paraded out, a frantic attempt to convince the world that Vegas is something more than a gambler's paradise. To the unsuspecting tourist, the illusion is perfect. Sin City appears more powerful, more seductive than ever before. They believe it's immune to the rot that consumed Atlantic City. But look closer. Beneath that suffocating neon glare, the warning signs are no longer emerging. They're screaming. The very same destructive patterns that brought a coastal empire to its knees are now taking root in the desert. This city has shackled itself to a dangerously singular model, the relentless machine of tourism and gambling. For all its talk of expanding into conventions and sports, it's nothing but a smokescreen. The brittle backbone of its entire economy remains the same old story. The casinos, the hotels, and the sprawling entertainment traps that line the Strip. This fatal reliance leaves Las Vegas catastrophically exposed to the slightest tremor. A shift in travel trends, a whisper of recession, or the earth-shattering blow of a global pandemic. And at the exact same time, the very soul of Vegas, the experience that once defined it for the average American, is being systematically erased. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Predatory hidden fees, hotel costs that have exploded into the stratosphere, and outrageously priced meals that have twisted a once affordable escape into a high-stakes gamble before you even lay eyes on a slot machine. The promise of a Vegas for everyone? It's not just vanishing, it's being deliberately dismantled. And what rises from its ashes is a cold, calculated city engineered exclusively for the ultra-wealthy, the high rollers, and the corporate vultures. This glittering, soulless mirage may project an aura of invincibility, but history whispers a chilling warning. The more blinding the light, the deeper and darker the shadows it casts. And make no mistake, just like Atlantic City, the cracks in the foundation are already there for anyone brave enough to see. Las Vegas has always cloaked itself in the arrogant title of entertainment capital of the world. But behind this proud facade lurks a profoundly dangerous truth. The city remains almost completely enslaved to a single industry. Peel back the layers of flashing lights, deafening concerts, sterile conventions, and shiny new sports teams, and what do you find at its rotten core? The casino floor. Gambling revenue doesn't just dominate the economy, it suffocates it, with nearly every other so-called attraction designed for one purpose: to funnel people back into that same predatory system. The hotels are just gilded cages to keep gamblers close. The shows are just bait to lure them onto the Strip. And even the celebrated new sports arenas are plastered with casino logos, tangled in a web of corporate partnerships. This is the exact same catastrophic dependency that sealed Atlantic City's fate. When its gambling fever broke and rival states began opening their own casinos, Atlantic City had nothing to fall back on. Its economy didn't just shrink, it imploded because it had no other identity. Today, Las Vegas is marching blindly down that same path to ruin. Yes, it has tacked on sports teams and a convention business, but these are not new pillars. They are merely decorations on the same crumbling facade, inextricably tied to tourism. If that river of visitors slows to a trickle, the shockwave will not be a ripple. It will be a tsunami, devastating every single layer of the economy. We've already seen the terrifying preview of this disaster. In 2020, when the world stopped moving, Las Vegas was brought to its knees. The lights went out. Casinos shuttered, tens of thousands of workers were cast aside, and the Strip became an eerie, silent ghost town. And though the city has clawed its way back, that crisis ripped the mask off, revealing the terrifying fragility of the entire system. Just like Atlantic City, Las Vegas is gambling its entire future on one spin of the wheel. And if that bet doesn't pay off, the collapse will be just as swift and just as brutal.